What if the world you know suddenly became too vast, too dangerous, and everything you loved was just out of reach? This is the harrowing journey of Paul, a man whose life takes an unimaginable turn, forcing him into an epic battle for survival within the confines of his own home. Our story begins with Paul, a middle-aged man, enjoying his usual swim in the sea. The tranquil morning is shattered when he spots an ominous funnel cloud forming in the sky. Unbeknownst to him, a silent ring of bubbles forms around him, only to vanish as quickly as they appeared. Finishing his swim, Paul returns to his peaceful coastal home, unaware of the profound changes awaiting him. On May 2nd, Paul, owner of a bustling shipbuilding company, arrives at work. His team is deep into a crucial order, its completion vital for the company's survival. After overseeing his subordinates, he drives home, exchanging the city's frantic pace for the serene solitude of the coast. There, his wife, Elise, and daughter Mia await him, portraying the picture of a happy, idyllic family. Later that day, Paul discovers the kitchen faucet has stopped working. He heads to the basement with Mia to investigate. Their curious cat, Tofu, tries to follow, but they keep him out, wary of him disturbing the fish in the basement aquarium. While Mia watches the aquatic life, Paul repairs the leaking boiler. Mia is startled by a spider, pleading with her father to kill it, but Paul gently refuses, explaining that spiders are beneficial, preying on mosquitoes and flies. To lighten the mood, they engage in a playful game, Paul pretending to be a monster attempting to eat Mia, filling the room with her joyous laughter. Returning upstairs, Paul begins cooking dinner. Afterward, the family enjoys a lively dance party in the living room. Once Mia is tucked into bed, Paul and Elise continue their dance, their evening culminating in an intimate retreat to the bedroom. May 5th brings the first unsettling signs. During his morning shower, Paul notices the shower head seems inexplicably higher than usual. Later, putting on his shirt, he finds it suddenly too loose, forcing him to choose another. At work, a crucial payment for their order is delayed yet again, leaving him deeply frustrated. Despite his foul mood that evening, Mia's sweet persistence melts his defenses, and he tells her a bedtime story, even giving her a playful ride on his back. By May 7th, Paul is genuinely alarmed. All his clothes are now noticeably too large, and he has lost a significant amount of weight. Disturbed, he visits a doctor, only to be horrified when his height is measured at 176 centimeters. He insists he has been 180 centimeters since he was 18. The doctor dismisses his concerns, attributing the change to age and stress, but Paul argues that a 4-centimeter reduction is far too drastic to be normal. Back at work, even his safety helmet feels oversized. The unsettling changes fuel his anxiety, robbing him of sleep. Determined to confront this inexplicable phenomenon, Paul decides to spend his sleepless nights productively, embarking on a rigorous workout regimen. May 20th brings further alarming developments. While showering, Paul observes the showerhead towering above him. His wedding ring, now loose, slips effortlessly from his thinning finger. Later, meeting Elise, they are both stunned. Paul is now significantly shorter than his wife. Panicked, they rush to the hospital. Despite a battery of tests, doctors are baffled. Paul appears perfectly healthy, with medical records only indicating a proportional decrease in all his body measurements. Frustrated by the inconclusive results and endless examinations, Paul leaves the hospital against medical advice, returning home. In the ensuing days, Paul's shrinking accelerates. He even attempts to joke about it, quipping that he's destined for the circus. As he approaches Tofu's size, Elise grows increasingly concerned that the cat might perceive him as prey. Reluctantly, she decides to keep Tofu outside. By June 30th, Paul has dwindled to a mere 40 centimeters tall. Left alone in the house, he spots Tofu peering curiously through the window pane. Suddenly, the front door opens. Paul scrambles, hiding beneath a bed, only to discover a realtor showing their home to prospective buyers. He overhears the realtor explaining that the owner is selling due to her husband's disappearance and the overwhelming memories associated with the house. When Elise eventually returns, Paul confronts her, furious that she didn't warn him about the visitors and made the decision to sell their home without his knowledge. Elise, her voice laced with frustration, explains she has no alternative. Paul's refusal to see doctors, coupled with his inability to earn an income, has left them unable to pay the mortgage. Paul retorts that he refuses to be a lab rat and doesn't consider himself sick, leaving his desperate wife struggling to convey the dire gravity of their situation. On July 5th, Mia, in a touching gesture, places her tiny father in a dollhouse, providing him with a measure of safety and comfort. Exploring his miniature new home, Paul attempts to lighten the mood, dancing with a doll to entertain his daughter. However, when Mia playfully growls, wanting to play monster, her innocent scream painfully assaults his minuscule eardrums. Immediately remorseful, Mia apologizes. That night, Paul, scaling his wife's now enormous hand, climbs into bed beside her, a poignant testament to their enduring bond. By July 10th, navigating the house has become a perilous endeavor for Paul. Resourcefully, he fashions a miniature rope with a hook from fishing tackle to aid his movement. At that precise moment, Tofu slips into the house through a small opening, instantly filling Paul with terror. In his frantic attempt to evade the cat, Paul trips over his hook, sustaining an injury. He removes his bloodied shirt, then, arming himself with a sewing needle, makes a desperate dash towards the relative safety of the dollhouse. But Tofu's pursuit is relentless. Paul narrowly escapes by rolling through a crack in the basement door. As the cat raises its paw to strike, Paul loses his footing on the stairs, tumbling into a trash bin in the basement. Later, Elise returns home to find Paul's bloodied shirt on the floor. A wave of dread washes over her, and she immediately begins searching. Her calls echo through the basement as Paul, trapped in the bin, cries out desperately, but his tiny voice is lost to her. Tofu then appears, and Paul, in a desperate attempt to alert his wife, tries to draw the cat's attention. But to Elise, the sight confirms her worst fear. She believes Tofu has killed and devoured her husband. Devastated, she ascends the stairs, leaving Paul utterly alone and unheard in the darkness. Having spent a harrowing day in the trash bin, Paul emerges, having fashioned rudimentary new clothes. He carefully climbs out, venturing into the vast, cavernous expanse of the basement. He locates the sewing needle that fell with him, arming himself. The distinct sound of a spider nearby sends a shiver down his spine, prompting him to hurry towards the leaking boiler, desperate for a drink and a quick wash. The following morning, Paul hears activity upstairs. He races to the stairs, frantically trying to attract his family's attention, but his efforts are futile. He overhears Mia expressing a desire to search for him in the basement, but her mother refuses. Realizing it's too soon to surrender, Paul finds a piece of white chalk and painstakingly writes his name, Paul, on the floor. It's an ingenious plan, yet it has one critical flaw: no one from his family ever comes downstairs. Later, hunger gnaws at Paul. Scouring for food, he discovers a mousetrap baited with cheese, already swarming with ants. He uses his needle to shoo them away, then carefully drops a nail onto the trap, attempting to trigger it. As he begins to eat the cheese, a spider descends from above, its presence terrifying him. Paul is forced to make as much noise as possible to drive it away. Determined, Paul uses the nail, a piece of rag, and a bottle cap filled with water to painstakingly break through a cardboard box near the aquarium. It's a lengthy, arduous process, but by soaking the cardboard, he eventually creates an opening. Inside, amidst discarded junk and office supplies, he spots a box of matches, tantalizingly out of reach. Lacking the strength to move the heavy book blocking his path, he barricades his makeshift entrance and settles in for the night. On July 15th, renewed sounds from upstairs stir Paul into action. He bangs a nail and a paperclip together, desperate to attract his wife's attention, but his efforts are futile. He overhears her phone conversation, a crushing revelation. The house has been sold, and they will soon be moving out. The realization that there's no point in waiting any longer washes over him, and Paul, in despair, decides to get drunk. He makes his way to the basement's wine cellar. With his needle, he punctures a bottle cork, then uses a thimble to collect the dripping wine, drinking it. However, the potent alcohol quickly overwhelms his tiny system, and he immediately begins vomiting. Just then, Paul spots the spider, now an imposing, massive creature observing him. Arming himself with his needle, He climbs onto the aquarium, defiantly challenging the spider to battle. Moments later, the spider lunges, startling Paul and sending him tumbling into the aquarium water. As he falls, a memory flashes, diving into the vast sea. He finds a fleeting moment of peace watching the goldfish, a small delight amidst his terror. Climbing back out, he pours some fish food from a nearby bucket, but, despite his hunger, doesn't dare to taste it himself. Later, Paul retreats to his hiding place, only to find the spider waiting, a silent predator in the dark. He strikes back with his needle and flees, seeking refuge behind a bookcase. But the spider's pursuit is relentless, pinning him against the wall. In a desperate surge of adrenaline, Paul seizes a wooden splinter, thrusting it into the creature's face, injuring one of its eyes. The spider recoils, and Paul, seizing the opportunity, lets out a defiant shout, driving the wounded creature away completely. Next, Paul meticulously drags scraps of paper from his shelter box. He retrieves the box of matches and, with immense effort, manages to light one, coaxing a tiny fire to life. He warms himself by the flickering flame, finding solace beside a tin soldier, one of his daughter's beloved toys. Paul confides in the soldier, admitting how much he misses Mia, and, in a poignant whisper, asks the toy to convey his love and assure her that he is still alive. By July 20th, Paul's existence is a miserable, solitary struggle, yet he refuses to surrender to fate. He hears a commotion upstairs and races to the stairs, hoping to attract the attention of a man descending into the basement. But the giant's footsteps are deafening, causing unbearable pain in his tiny ears. As the footsteps recede and the man leaves, Paul notices the fish in the aquarium is gone, leaving him utterly devastated. By August 2nd, Paul has shrunk even further, to a point where even mosquitoes appear as menacing giants. Observing an insect's flight, he spots a mosquito net on the basement window, a potential avenue of escape. Gathering every ounce of his strength, Paul begins his arduous climb onto the wooden leg of a towering shelving unit. After a brief rest, he accelerates, leaping onto the stone cladding of the basement wall. The gaps between the stones, once insignificant, now resemble treacherous mountain roads. As darkness falls, he eventually reaches the boiler, discovering a spider's lair alarmingly close by. Paul attempts to navigate cautiously around the intricate web, but accidentally stumbles into it, drawing the spider's slow, deliberate approach. It's no longer a mere spider, but a colossal, monstrous entity. Paul is so utterly terrified that he involuntarily wets himself, bracing for an imminent death. Yet, at the last moment, the spider retreats, perhaps failing to notice him due to its injured eyes, or perhaps, inexplicably, taking pity. Driven by a desperate will to live, Paul presses onward, finally reaching the mosquito net, but he is still too large to fit through its fine mesh, forcing him to wait until morning, hoping for further shrinkage. The next morning, August 7th, he is roused by the gentle touch of an ant on his leg. The massive spider approaches once more, but this time, Paul has shrunk just enough to squeeze through the net and escape, leaving the giant creature unable to follow. Paul finally escapes into the outside world, a realm where dangers are even more vast and unpredictable. He walks freely across the ground, pausing at a single drop of water, then watches a white butterfly drift gracefully towards him. In an internal monologue, he affirms that he has finally left his cage, declaring he is no longer afraid. As the butterfly flutters away, Paul gazes up at the starry sky, a deep ache of longing for his daughter. Miles away, Mia, too, looks up at the very same stars, a silent, cosmic connection between them.